Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, November 26th, 2019. Time for yet another show. It is Thanksgiving week, Tuesday this time. Tomorrow being Wednesday. Questionable for tomorrow. I think here's what's going on. All the cooking is happening tomorrow, of course. We're hosting this time. So come on over in case you don't have a Thanksgiving to go to, or if you do and you just want a second one. Sure, why not? I'm sure everyone who's doing all the cooking, most of which is not me, although I do the cooking during the week, don't get me wrong. But Thanksgiving is a specialty item that my wife enjoys preparing very much, and I have to kind of get out of the way. But I also have to bring kids to the dentist tomorrow early, 8 a.m. But I think I might be back in time to possibly do a 9, but I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not sure exactly how to handle that. I don't want to leave you too long without new programming, and I think I might be able to record some material for Thursday, possibly Friday. It seems like a long time, seems like a crazy time to be off the air, of course, but it might be a quiet period. Maybe Trump will calm down and fly off to Florida and hang out with Ivanka, and that will soothe his nerves. I don't know. The president could resign, be arrested, anything could happen. But anyway, is it like that around your house? Do you not know what's going on? Are any of you being kicked out of the kitchen? Are any of you going to be chained to the kitchen? I don't know. Thought you might want to share some of that today. In fact, let's see. We got so many things to go around to. I'm going to try and get also to a new contributor today, Ellen Bieberman, who has sent us a report from the wilds of New York's 21st District, Elise Stefanik's district, as a matter of fact. So we do have someone on the ground reporting up there, just sort of giving us a flavor of what it's all about and where did she come from. Not Ellen, but Elise. Though we could stand for contribution on some of the background of where Ellen came from, too. Why not? Again, a good reminder. And I want to update that announcement one of these days, but it does function. It doesn't have a problem like the other one did. In the text, the announcement reminding you all that, yes, your contributions, not financial contributions, though those are great too. The other one about your contributions to the content of the show, I'd love for us to see more results from that. We have our regular contributors and now a brand new one, so that's a nice addition to the stable, and it's always great and just to change things up, put a different voice on the air. Nice for a break for me. It's filling, nutritious material. Excellent. Okay, let's see. Athena says, starting today, I guess this is a GIF meant to represent that she's perhaps chained to the kitchen like so many of the rest of us for Thanksgiving. But do you enjoy it? That's the next question, I guess. I don't know. It's an ordeal cooking all this stuff. We have an additional utensil that will be put to work, or I guess appliance that will be put to work. The Instant Pot, which is a huge hit in the house. And that's how I've been doing all that cooking during the week. But I can't stew everything. So I guess it's time to turn the oven on and get this turkey going. All right, Daily Coast Radio is live now. Bill tells us all the way from Portland, Maine, where they have is this a dual oven situation up in New Hampshire? You're just working on one? Are you doing takeout Thanksgiving? Are you doing Chinese Thanksgiving? Are you preparing a traditional Thanksgiving? Do you have to hunt for your own turkey? I don't know what it's like in Maine. It's Portland. It's pretty developed, right? All right, Daily Coast Radio is live now. Kagro X, me, David Waldman, gives you permission to stop working. Yes, even if you're a paramedic administering CPR or a Space Force corporal fighting the Martian invasion. And tune in for the turkey and graviest show in cyberspace. And that's this one right here. Okay. I know you're not working. Even if you are home and chained to the kitchen, you're probably not really working. If you're at the office, forget about it. You're just counting the hours until you can get out of there. A few people, of course, are trying to cram in all the work they know they're going to miss out on, all the fun between Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm sure, I guess if you work at like Amazon, they probably wouldn't let you listen to this podcast anyway, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is it would encourage you to break free and escape your chains. But you're probably processing all our orders right about now and sending us the marshmallows that we need for topping our sweet potatoes. How many people do that, by the way? Bill says we eat dirt on Thanksgiving. It's all we have. We're rural here. You got squirrel, but I know you treat them as pets. And down here in certain parts of Virginia, squirrel is still a much sought after delicacy. I don't know how well I say sought after, but I mean, if you go outside, there they are. And I guess that's true of deer too. And yet, squirrel, big part of actually the original ingredient in Brunswick stew, in case you didn't know that. And is that even a thing that you guys hear about? It's canned around here. Occasionally, you'll find it on the shelves in the store, but it's sort of a novelty item when you're looking at Virginia stores. All those times you drive down to Virginia and say, I need a unique Virginia gift. Very often you'll walk away with peanuts, which is the tastier of the two, really, as far as between roasted peanuts and Brunswick stew. But who am I to judge? And the answer is, I have 2 hours. I got to judge something. All right, here we go. Let's see. We'll pick up on. It's time to turn to Pocket, really, and pick up on the stories of the day. Remind myself what they are, what happened yesterday, things that need to be discussed. Much to add to yesterday's show. Lots to catch up on background. Let's see. Yesterday, we had a ruling from yet another federal judge. And I grabbed the CNBC early reporting on this. And then I never went back and got the follow-up reporting. But I'll let you know, all we really have to know is that a federal judge in Washington, presumably, I think we're in the D.C. circuit here, has ruled on Don McGahn's case. Ex-White House counsel Don McGahn must, it says, appear before Congress for testimony. This according to the judge, who is the person you listen to when you're trying to figure things out and want to know what happened in court. That's the guy, sometimes woman, up on the big bench there, black robe, just so we're all on the same page here. Let's see. Key points. Oh, that's nice. Thanks, CNBC, for putting bullet points up at the top. A judge rules that ex-White House counsel Don McGahn must appear before Congress for testimony, saying presidents are not kings. This is true. So that's nice. Oh, look at this. Breaking news right up at the top here. White House on lockdown due to airspace violation. Fighter jets scrambled. That is super exciting. So I don't know what that's about. I mean, the White House is on lockdown due to an airspace violation. That I do know what that's about. I don't know more about what that's about. Fighter jet scramble, that seems pretty serious. It's very often just something dumb. Could be someone flying a drone into White House airspace, in which case I don't know the fighter jets are going to be all that helpful. Could be a commercial airliner that has strayed from its course. We are, of course, the White House, not far from National Airport, renamed Reagan Airport some decades ago, but people who lived here before that happened just call it National Airport. And, all right, it has no effect on the court case, as far as I can tell, but I suppose that's another thing for us to keep an eye on. In fact, why don't I skip the bullet points and just go to the body of the story, and then I'll probably have to search for more updates about it. I don't know if there's any more news to report on the situation, but perhaps there will be. Former White House counsel, we'll start off this way. Don McGahn must comply with a subpoena to testify before Congress. A federal judge ruled yesterday, saying presidents are not kings. That was true yesterday, true also today. The Department of Justice said it will appeal the ruling. That was the news I was looking for, of course. I figured that they would. But it's pretty open and shut for real people. We'll just see whether they can put together a panel on the appeals level that can come up with some reason to even hear the case or some reason why they can rule differently or overturn it. If they can't, then I imagine the Justice Department will announce that they will appeal to the Supreme Court. And we'll all be sitting around here waiting until it is too late, according to members of Congress, to press forward with actually getting the testimony that by that time perhaps 3 courts will have said we were entitled to as, people, citizens of the United States. I say we. The case stemmed from an August lawsuit, all the way back then in August, filed against McGahn by the House Judiciary Committee. The committee issued a subpoena to McGahn in April, just giving you the timeline here, seeking his testimony on matters related to former special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe. Trump administration lawyers responded that McGahn is, quote, immune, I don't know why they didn't say absolutely immune as they were claiming, from being compelled to testify. But U.S. District Judge Ketanji, do I have that right? Ketanji, Ketanji Brown Jackson of Washington, disagreed. It is clear to this court, Jackson said, and he capitalizes court, which ordinarily I always was taught was reserved for the Supreme Court. But you go, Judge Jackson, why not? If it's your court, I think you should capitalize it. Maybe the rest of us could be excused, but you do what you like. It is clear to this court, Jackson said, that with respect to senior-level presidential aides, absolute immunity, that's what they were claiming, from compelled congressional process simply does not exist. Yes, that is true. It is not a thing, as we say in the vernacular. By the way, he doesn't capitalize congressional process, which is interesting. I would capitalize process myself, but ordinarily, yeah, I would have capitalized congressional, yes, not court, but okay. Stated simply, the primary takeaway from the past 250 years of recorded American history, of which this is now a part, as we are making a podcast that's recorded, is that presidents are not kings, added the judge, an Obama appointee. Oh, well, gee, of course. Well, all right. McGahn's attorney, William Burke, B-U-R-C-K, by the way, said his client, quote, will comply with Judge Jackson's decision unless it is stayed pending appeal, which ordinarily is probably what you would find. But if they draw a nice panel, maybe they would say, go ahead. We'll decide the esoteric underlying legal issues afterwards. Minutes later, Justice Department spokeswoman Carrie Kupech, remember her? I think we've discussed her before, confirmed to CNBC that the agency will appeal the ruling and seek to halt it from taking effect in the meantime. That would be looking for the stay. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham argued in a statement that Jackson's ruling, quote, ready, contradicts longstanding legal precedent established by administrations of both political parties. Of course, again, just a reminder, Judge Jackson's ruling said no. What contradicts longstanding legal precedent, in fact, 250 years of it, is your position on this. But Stephanie Grisham is, in fact, qualified to say the opposite. After all, she's been in court a couple of times, I think. So I think that ought to be enough. I mean, it was on drunk driving charges as the defendant, but I mean, court is court, as far as I'm concerned. You're in there, you know what you're doing. It's automatic. We will appeal and are confident that the important constitutional principle advanced by the administration will be vindicated, Grisham said. Or said she said. Anyway, she probably wrote it down and just faxed it out. Though the case predates the focus of the House impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump, that is, focusing on Ukraine, the ruling was expected to have implications on that investigation as a test of Congress's power to compel witness testimony from those who have worked in the executive branch, as they are, of course, still trying to do with certain witnesses in the Ukraine situation, most notably, I guess, John Bolton, Charles Kupperman as well, the two of them working with the same attorney. Not that necessarily means they'll do the same thing with the same ruling, even though they have the same attorney. But at any rate, yes, Congress still in the middle of trying to prove that it can compel testimony. All the judges say so, but the Trump administration plan is to make them say so again with respect to these particular defendants. In fact, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it's a good bet, and logic would say yes, but a lot of people think that Bolton and Kupperman's testimony, or their, I won't say willingness, but their agreeing to testify based on the results of the McGahn case is not, in my view, guaranteed. Not because I make a legitimate, supportable legal argument in the traditional sense as to why their case is either distinguishable or isn't applicable, but because I think the administration will simply say, you've handed me a court order here that says Donald McGahn must testify. My name is John Bolton, and I'm not going. When you bring me an order that says John Bolton has to testify, I'll appeal that. And then when the appeals court says I have to testify, I'll appeal that. And then if the Supreme Court says I have to testify, I'll just wait for everybody involved in the case to die, including me, and then I won't go. And we'll leave behind strong precedent for the imperial presidency next time around. You see, I think that's the game they would like to play. Okay, pardon the interruption there for some dead air, which was a damn sight better sounding, I think, I dare say, than what was actually happening here in studio. But I just wanted to spare you that. All right, continuing on here, as we said, the case predates the focus of the current House impeachment inquiry into Ukraine. But if they come away with the win on McGahn eventually, the idea under normal legal circumstances is that you can say, look, the fact pattern is pretty much identical. You're making the same claim of absolute immunity. The courts, perhaps by that time, will have said there is no such thing. And McGahn has to testify. And those people making the same claims will likewise have to testify. One such potential witness, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, has said he will not testify unless a court orders him to do so. One of his deputies, and that's a good way of reading that, a court orders him to do so. Like, you could show him the McGahn result, and he'll say, I am making exactly the same claim, but I'm just not that guy. One of his deputies, Charles Kupperman, filed a lawsuit in October asking a different federal judge whether he must comply with a congressional subpoena to testify to impeachment investigators. Kupperman and Bolton share a lawyer. They're not splitting the bill or anything. And the outcome of Kupperman's suit could determine whether Bolton testifies. It's interesting because it's up until now, everyone has sort of assumed that the outcome of McGahn's case could determine whether Bolton testifies. But he's now, or this report, I'm not sure whether it's erroneous or not, links his decision to Kupperman's and not to McGahn's. We will see. In her ruling, Jackson said the law also required, quote, other current and former senior level White House officials, unquote, who are subpoenaed to appear. Yes, it really should and could under normal circumstances. We'll see whether it does here. House Democrats have sought to dismiss Kupperman's lawsuit, fearing delays could stymie the momentum of their investigation. And they will. In November, the leaders of the impeachment investigation withdrew the Kupperman subpoena and urged him instead to be guided by the outcome of the McGahn case. Gee, I wonder if he'll cooperate. Though he has not testified, Bolton has emerged repeatedly in the recollections of other witnesses as a potentially instrumental witness for Democrats. The former National Security Council official Fiona Hill, Fee, we call her, because 4 weddings and a funeral. Fiona testified, Dr. Hill, we should say, testified last week that Bolton was concerned by the actions of U.S. Ambassador Gordon Sondland, White House acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney, and others. Hill testified last week that Bolton told her to go to the lawyers for the National Security Council to tell them that he was, quote, not part of whatever drug deal Sondland and Mulvaney were cooking up, Hill said. Bolton has signaled that he holds little sympathy for the White House. On Friday, he accused the administration of locking him out of his Twitter account. Now, that's serious, right? That deserves at least the dramatic music at a minimum, right? Or perhaps even the little-used... Unacceptable! Yeah, that's not actually John Bolton's voice, but I wonder how many of you recognize that? Where do we fall demographically? Are millennials recognizing this? Are Gen Z, Gen Y? What would be the generation that would recognize that one? It's from, Adventure Time, the cartoon my kids were watching, but which is suitable for adult entertainment as well. Probably less so for the kids, actually, now that I mention it. Anyway, Bolton has signaled that he holds little sympathy for the White House. On Friday, he accused the administration of locking him out of his Twitter account, questioning whether the move was due to, quote, fear of what I might say, unquote. Trump denied that he had Bolton's account locked, so I guess he did that. McGahn, the most prominent figure in Mueller's report, that's true, was supposed to testify before the committee about events examined by the former FBI director's investigation in May. A day before his testimony was scheduled to take place, White House counsel Pat Cipollone, do we have the E on the end of that one? I keep forgetting, wrote to Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler of New York saying McGahn was, quote, absolutely immune from compelled congressional testimony, unquote. The Judiciary Committee argued that such blanket immunity was not lawful and ran afoul of the Constitution's separation of powers. In court papers, the committee also argued that McGahn's testimony would be crucial to the committee's decision whether to recommend articles of impeachment. By the way, I recommend that we do recommend articles of impeachment, but that's a subject, remember, again, that the Judiciary Committee will have to take up again, revisiting the Mueller report and deciding what to do with the thing. Nadler said in a statement Monday night that he expects McGahn to follow his legal obligations and promptly appear before the committee. And he might do that. I'll just, I appeared in order to say that I'm still, in my view, absolutely immune and I'm leaving right now. And then we'll see what you think you can make me do when it comes to compelling testimony after that. All right, so that's where we are. They will appeal. I don't know what kind of panel they'll draw. I don't know if the appeals court will agree to take up the case. I don't know whether, if they don't, whether that's the end of it or whether you can appeal their decision not to take the case to the Supreme Court. I think you might actually be able to get away with that one. And I assume they'll appeal as many times as they possibly can. Okay. Let me see. Let's add this heading into the break. There's a few other stories to catch up with. This is an interesting new twist to the stupid pardoning of the war criminals story. It's stupid that it happened. It's an important story, and there's greater import to it all. And I think all of you probably, even unaided, have come to the same conclusion. It definitely pushes the boundaries of what presidents, well, I don't know what future presidents might do with this, but what presidents have used the pardon power for, and of course presents really dangerous precedent for just pardoning basically just about anything. I mean, is it literally true that the president's pardon power is unchecked? We've always regarded it as such because we thought that political considerations kept the usage and abuse of the pardon power in check. Although, really, honestly, that was pretty. What should we say? It was strained to the breaking point with Nixon's pardon from Ford. You would have thought, but this is an interesting new bent. Like, I guess you could have excused it last time around, saying, well, you're really talking about the most, the highest level constitutional gray area here. Not really sure what to do. Could be the case that you're better off allowing for the pardon, quote unquote, for the good of the country. There's no real argument about that here in these cases under the military code of justice, for one thing, and raises serious questions about the efficacy of the chain of command, given that they are pardoning somebody who is quick to criticize his military superiors, but thinks he can get away with it so long as he cultivates the patronage of his ultimate superior in terms of the chain of command, the President of the United States, if that's who Donald Trump is. Anyway, This piece in the Daily Beast, Trump tells allies he wants absolved war criminals to campaign for him, which is a very unusual thing to do when illustrated by one of the worst photos available of Donald Trump. My gosh, his eyes look infected in this one. Fallout from the clemency cost the Navy Secretary Richard Spencer his job. We discussed that briefly yesterday. But a former Pentagon deputy chief backs the ousted official. That's a sideline to Spencer Ackerman and Asawin Subsang's piece in the Daily Beast. Let's begin it, then take a break and return to it. If Donald Trump gets his wish, he'll soon take the 3 convicted or accused war criminals he's spared from consequence on the road as special guests in his re-election campaign, according to 2 sources who have heard Trump discuss their potential roles for the 2020 effort. Now, I thought that he was reinstating Gallagher to active service in all of this, and I don't know whether they ever struck any kind of a deal. I know that was in the offing, and that was part of the reason Spencer ended up on the outs. But I thought that there might have been a deal for restoring his rank and restoring his status as a Navy SEAL, and then he would sort of take that as a win and retire, which would be the preferred outcome, that he leave service immediately. And I think he probably knows it too, because I'm sure he's got, well, maybe not, he's crazy. He may have some concern though about the people he's serving with deciding that they were all best off and safest if he were out of the service, whether living or dead. So I'm not certain whether he's going to return to active service, but that would pose a real problem, active service members campaigning for Trump. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. Okay, where did we leave off with this? Very early, and I think after the first paragraph, we jumped off the bus here. So, if Trump gets his wish, he'll take these pardoned, convicted, and or accused, some of them hadn't gone to trial yet, war criminals that he spared on the road as special guests in his re-election campaign, despite military and international backlash to Trump's November 15th clemency, fallout from which cost Navy Secretary Richard Spencer his job on Sunday. Trump believes he has rectified major injustices. Major injustices. 2 people tell the Daily Beast they've heard Trump talk about how he'd like to have the now cleared Clint Lawrence, Matthew Goldstein, or, it says or, maybe not and, Edward Gallagher show up at his 2020 campaign rallies. They should bring the regular Gallagher there. He should smash watermelons. I think that would be more suited to, I think that's more to the liking of the crowd, but maybe not. On a hot day, possibly, they could get away with that one. Anyway, they could bring him along to the rallies or even have a moment on stage at his renomination convention in Charlotte next year. Right-wing media have portrayed all 3 as martyrs brought down by, quote, political correctness within the military. It's now considered political correctness not to murder people. Just pointing that out for those of you who live in the area of Fifth Avenue and don't have Kevlar vests. He briefly discussed making it a big deal at the convention, said one of these sources who requested anonymity to talk about private conversations. The president made a reference to the 2016 convention where he brought on stage heroes like former Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell, who refused to execute detained civilians ahead of a devastating Taliban attack. Doing sort of the opposite of the people he's now pardoning, but whatever. Former Army Lieutenant Lawrence was sentenced to 19 years in prison in 2013 for murder after ordering his soldiers in 2010 to fire on 3 unarmed Afghan men riding a motorcycle, killing 2 of them. Though honestly, they were riding a motorcycle, they were asking for it, some people say. He walked out of military prison at Fort Leavenworth on November 15th, making room for Mike Pompeo, I would remind you. He walked out of military prison at Fort Leavenworth on November 15th. Next month, former Green Beret Major Goldstein, it's Golsteyn, was supposed to stand trial for the murder of an unarmed Afghan man whom he told the CIA he killed in the belief that the man was a Taliban bomb maker. Goldstein, who allegedly burned the man's corpse, okay, totally necessary, pleaded not guilty to the murder. The Green Berets stripped Goldstein of his Special Forces tab. Lawrence and Goldstein were both, it's plural French, causes célèbres, I guess célèbres, with the S on the end of that too, but who knows how to pronounce that in French, other than French speakers who listen to the program. Anyway, they were causes célèbres in certain military circles and among their right-wing supporters, as was Navy SEAL Chief Gallagher. A military jury this summer acquitted Gallagher. This is important. I guess that we actually know the circumstances of Gallagher's case, because he's accused of some pretty horrific things, but as it turns out, he was acquitted of some of them. A military jury this summer acquitted Gallagher for the murder of a wounded teenage fighter for the so-called Islamic State. The case, which both featured Trump's conspicuous intervention boosting Gallagher, which may have something to do with how he was acquitted, we don't know, and serious prosecutorial misconduct. So watch out for that. You never want to have that happen. This is according to the New York Times, linked herein. Anyway, the case, which featured both Trump's conspicuous intervention, boosting Gallagher, and serious prosecutorial misconduct, began, like Lawrence's, with Gallagher's own platoon mates reporting his conduct. Against Gallagher's denial, 2 SEALs testified seeing the senior SEAL chief stab the wounded teenager in the neck. That seems pretty clear, right? Gallagher, along with lower-ranking SEALs, took a photo with the corpse and texted it with the caption, "Good story behind this, got him with my hunting knife." But another SEAL reversed his testimony to say that he, not Gallagher, killed the wounded teenager by closing off an inserted breathing tube. Gallagher's only conviction was for taking the photo, and he was released for time served. Trump pardoned Lawrence and Goldstein and reversed Gallagher's demotion in rank. Opposition to the clemency was reportedly ardent in the senior ranks of the Pentagon and the uniformed military. The Navy opted to proceed with an internal review over stripping Gallagher of his trident pin, which symbolizes his place in the elite commando ranks. Trump, via tweet, insisted that the trident board not happen, and publicly clashed with Spencer, his Navy secretary, who took the position that the board ought to proceed despite Trump's tweets. That is, that the tweets aren't orders, and they are not. He's correct there, but now he's fired. Doesn't matter that he was correct. Yet late on Sunday afternoon, Defense Secretary Mark Esper announced that Spencer had made a secret entreaty to Trump that would have rendered the board for show and ensured Gallagher retired at full SEAL rank and pension. Esper's account was in such stark opposition to Spencer's positions in the case that several in military circles, while acknowledging the murkiness around the entire episode, considered it to be untrue. A Navy Reserve officer who requested anonymity doubted that a true account would emerge from the administration, but said the current messy narrative is not credible. One day we'll unravel that as well. Esper, in a statement, said he was, quote, deeply troubled. He thinks he's Susan Collins. Deeply troubled by Spencer allegedly routing around the defense secretary to take a position the Pentagon conceded was contrary to Spencer's public position. That line holds Spencer was fired despite secretly agreeing with Trump on Gallagher's disposition. And Esper also confirmed he will do the exact thing that Trump and, allegedly, Spencer sought, permitting Gallagher to retire as a Navy chief and as a SEAL. Esper, astonishingly, told reporters Monday that Trump had ordered the defense secretary to ensure Gallagher keeps his trident, rendering moot the Navy's Trident Board proceeding. In irreconcilable contrast to that account, Spencer said in a scorching resignation letter that Trump had jeopardized the rule of law within the military, and he could not, in good conscience, carry out Trump's order to the Navy on Gallagher. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice are the shields that set us apart and the beacons that protect us all, Spencer wrote. Unfortunately, it has become apparent in this respect that I no longer share the same understanding with the Commander-in-Chief who appointed me in regards to the key principle of good order and discipline. Robert Work, a former Deputy Defense Secretary in the Obama and Trump administrations with deep ties to the Navy, said that while he has no first-hand knowledge of the debacle, he believed Spencer. I take Spencer's resignation letter as the truth, Work told the Daily Beast. It's one of those things where we'll never know the real truth until someone writes a book, I guess. He continued, I think Spencer just felt he had to do this. It's extremely unfortunate. Eugene Fidel, Fidell, of Yale Law School, maybe he's Fidel, I don't know, one of the foremost experts in United States military justice, cautioned that what exactly occurred remains unclear. But Fidel, that guy, said it had already done enormous damage to the Navy's fidelity, get it, to the law. That's good. Good job there, Spencer Ackerman and or Asawan. Okay, let's see. Esper has committed the very offense he has accused Spencer of having committed. Though in Esper's telling, it happened behind Esper's back, Fidel said. If Spencer did this, Spencer is in the wrong. Esper doing this makes Esper in the wrong. Either way, it's a body blow to the rule of law in the Department of the Navy. I don't know if I even get that. If Spencer did this, Richard Spencer did this, did what? Wrote the resignation letter? Spencer's wrong. Esper doing this makes Esper, and everybody's wrong, I guess. Okay. Either way, it's a body blow to the rule of law in the Department of the Navy. Esper received a political boost from the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, James Inhofe of Oklahoma, who had clashed with Spencer on other issues. Both Secretary Esper and President Trump deserve to have a leadership team who has their trust and confidence, Inhofe said in a statement. But in the Democratic-controlled House, the vice chairman of the Armed Services Committee, Maryland Democrat Anthony Brown, an Iraq veteran, came to Spencer's defense. It is a dark day when the president stands with those accused of committing war crimes, I agree, over a man like Secretary Spencer, Brown said in a statement. Neither the White House nor the Trump campaign spokespeople responded to requests for comment as of press time. While the war crimes pardons were not Trump's first, in May, he granted clemency to convicted murderer Michael Behenna, an Army lieutenant who in 2008 killed an unarmed, naked Iraqi man during an unauthorized interrogation. Doesn't sound very authorized, does it? Trump had fought the Pentagon for more than a year and a half for the pardons. Promoting them was Pete Hegseth. Of course, it had to be promoted on television, on Fox. An Iraq war veteran and Fox and Friends co-host who had aggressively and personally lobbied Trump since at least March to take such action. In fact, Lawrence, just days after receiving his pardon, appeared on Hegseth's Fox News show and effusively lauded Trump, saying, "I love you, sir. I love your ass, sir." He didn't actually go that far the way Sondland did, but okay. And telling the president, "You are awesome." Days before Spencer's firing, Lawrence also said on the Fox program that President Trump needed a better team around him, as well as more people watching your back. Gallagher, in a statement tweeted by Hegseth, called Trump a true leader and exactly what the military needs. Okay. I'm sure that's shared widely. Sounds like Lawrence was angling for a job, quite honestly. You need a better team around you, someone who's going to watch your back. all you need is pardoned war criminal murderers guarding the president, because that's totally stable. Gallagher's attorney, Tim Parlatore, told the Daily Beast on Monday afternoon that shortly after President Trump called his client to inform him that the rank reinstatement was coming, Gallagher held a conference call with members of his family and Parlatore to inform them of the news. The lawyer said he then joked on the phone call, "There's no quid pro quo? He didn't ask you to investigate the Bidens?" Ha ha ha. Gallagher then laughed and replied, "No, he just gave it to me," Parlatore recalled, adding that since the phone call, no quid pro quo, a clear reference to the impeachment inquiry and bedeviling the Trump presidency, has become a little inside joke between Gallagher and Parlatore, except we all get it. So it's not funny, but we get it. Yet even Trump allies believe that absolving convicted or accused war criminals of their actions' consequences, get that, has done substantial damage to the military. I think more often than not, when something like this happens in the administration, a lot of people hyperbolically state that this is undermining our institutions or destroying our democracy, said one ally of the Trump administration who works on military issues. Most of the time it's over-the-top nonsense, but not in this case. This whole thing is a mess, and it will undermine good order and discipline in the SEAL community when it is badly needed after a string of incidents involving severe misconduct. This person added, Pete Hegseth, a field-grade Army officer, should know what he's doing is wrong, but he either doesn't understand the negative repercussions this will have for officers and senior non-commissioned officers trying to maintain good order and discipline in their units, or doesn't care. It's shameful, and this is truly a black mark on the Trump administration's national security record. So there you have it. Black mark, everybody. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, it's serious. They're just not taking it very seriously. All right. At this point, perhaps I will lean on our new contributor. I was going to say our new friend, but probably old friend, but new contributor, Ellen Bieberman, from, again, New York's 21st District, where Elise Stefanik, I was going to say hails from, but she doesn't, and that's explained as part of the story. Very interesting. It's not a published piece that she's reading. This is her own opinion piece. Could very well be a diary over at Daily Kos, but hasn't been published there yet. But just running commentary from a local person giving us some insight into what's going on politically and demographically in this vast congressional district currently represented by this, Cinderella story coming out of nowhere, Elise Stefanik. Why don't you take it away from here, Ellen, and then take Elise Stefanik away as well.
Greetings from New York's 21st District, currently represented in the House by Elise Stefanik. I'm not an expert in the politics of the region, but I thought people might like to hear one viewpoint from someone living in Stefanik's district. Those of us who are politically active around here are equal measures pleased and dismayed that our Congresswoman has taken the opportunity of the House impeachment hearings to make a national name for herself. On the one hand, her poise, in contrast to shouters like Jim Jordan, makes her positions seem reasonable, even as she omits facts and twists logic. At the same time, her antics have allowed the country to see what we here in the North Country have known for a long time. Stefanik is a ruthless political operative, playing whatever part gets her furthest in her career, and they've helped her challenger, Tedra Cobb, gain prominence at a crucial point in her campaign. New York 21 is a huge district comprised of all or parts of the 12 northernmost counties of the state. Looking at a map, Albany, the capital of New York, is about halfway between New York City and the Canadian border. If you go about 15 miles north of Albany to Saratoga Springs and draw a line more or less horizontally across the state, lopping off the top third, that's New York 21. In the northern parts of the district, small to medium-sized dairy farms struggle to hang on. This goes back well before Trump, but it gets worse every year. Fort Drum, home of the 10th Mountain Division, is a big influence and economic engine in the Watertown area. Several prisons are located in the northern tier, including Dannemora Correctional. Yes, that's the one where the guys escaped. The middle of the district, where I live, encompasses the Adirondack Park, 6 million acres and 100,000 people. The least populated county in the state lies within the Adirondack Park. South of the Adirondacks, New York 21 has several good-sized communities that are more downstate and Albany-oriented. I don't know much about that part of the district, but it did go fairly heavily for Stefanik in the last election. Before Stefanik's tenure, the district was represented by Bill Owens, an Air Force veteran and North Country native. He won a special election when John McHugh, a longtime Republican representative, was tapped to be Secretary of the Army. Owens was the first Democrat to hold the seat in over 100 years. Note, he was actually elected to the 23rd district, but changes to the district boundaries put him in the 21st. Perhaps feeling as though the demographics of the new boundary lines put Democrats at a disadvantage, Owens chose not to run for a third term, throwing the seat open in 2014. Stefanik, a Paul Ryan protege, used her parents' summer home in Willsboro as her residential address, and with the help of the National Republican Party, prevailed over a few less than inspiring candidates for the next two elections. In 2018, Tedrick Cobb, a former St. Lawrence County legislator, convincingly defeated 5 other candidates in a hard-fought Democratic primary. Cobb ran on her background in community health and healthcare access, as well as her commitment to address climate change. Although she lost against Stefanik, she cut in half the losses experienced by her predecessor candidates. Elise Stefanik is known among detractors in the district as Elusive Elise for her refusal to hold town halls or to interact with constituents in anything other than highly controlled settings. Local press and reporters have likewise been frozen out of most unscripted interviews with the Congresswoman. She and her husband finally purchased a home in the district in Schuylerville in 2017, but that has not made her more involved in the district. Stefanik paints herself as a moderate, but votes with her Republican colleagues on most bills, including ending Obamacare. Although she professes to be concerned about climate change, her bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus mandates that no measures can be taken that are not clearly advantageous in the marketplace. As representative for Fort Drum, she has ample opportunity to wrap herself in military patriotism, which makes her aggressive support for a commander-in-chief who uses military aid as a political weapon particularly hypocritical. I have to admit I was baffled by her clownish efforts to derail the impeachment hearings, especially given her sensible, middle-of-the-road Republican persona. My guess is that she has been worried about Cobb's upcoming campaign and a possible blue wave election. Cobb worked very hard to pull together grassroots support from all corners of the district in 2018. She will not have a primary challenger and had already gotten the attention of national orgs such as Emily's List and Move On. With her catapult to center stage, thanks to Stefanik, and her boosted funding, she has a chance to take the seat in 2020. And I'll be one of the volunteers helping to make that happen.
And thank you very much for both the contribution and for being one of the volunteers helping make that happen up there. Again, Ellen Bieberman, everyone, and some round of applause. Thanks very much for joining us as a contributor and very valuable insight into what's going on in the background of this Elise Stefanik's political career. Very interesting insight as well. I like that, picking up the little bit of information. That's how she ended up there. So when you say Paul Ryan protege, was she working for Ryan in Washington? Is that what was going on, and decided to run for the district by virtue of her parents owning a summer home in the district, and she just pretended that was her home address? And you can do that. And it's up to the voters to decide whether or not they accept that. And basically, I'm sure that never really entered into consideration. She got the Republican nomination, and that was that. But we look forward to a strong challenge and flipping that district once again, even though it was technically a different district last time it was flipped. So, okay. Anyway, thanks again for both the contribution and the insight. Very important to get that. And remember, if you happen to live in one of these districts, or really honestly, if you just pick up the study of one of these important districts, you're as good as anybody else there. You are one of the world's foremost experts on living in that district. Doesn't matter whether you consider yourself a political expert or not. They don't screen for political expertise when they're polling people, and yet we consider that to be very important data, right? So trust yourself. Got an opinion on these things? Seen someone else's opinion in print that you think is worth sharing? Right? Pick up the smartphone and turn on the recording device. Record it and send it in to me here. You can use Gmail for this one. KagroX, as a matter of fact, at gmail.com. And by the way, don't worry so much about how you're doing with the reading. Everyone slips up in the reading. You hear me do it live all the time. What I like to do as a little favor to those of you who might be worried or nervous, or not at all, but maybe you have reason to be but aren't worried or nervous about how you'll sound on the air. I do spend a little bit of time. I love to pitch in a little bit and clean things up. If you hem and haw on something and put an and lose your place, that's okay. I'll usually get rid of that in the editing, and you come across as smooth and polished. And I love to help you out with that. And besides which, it makes the piece tighter and better sounding, and that will encourage you to contribute again. Damn, I didn't know how good I sounded on the radio. Well, now Ellen knows, and the rest of you can find out too. So, just encouraging everyone to pitch in on that one. Let's jump back into some of the stories I have tucked away in Pocket and in the tweet stream. Big story-ish, big-ish story. It's story-ish as well. Circulating this morning. Believe it or not, Jared Kushner has drawn another assignment to his vast portfolio. Donald Trump apparently can't get the wall thing done, and so we'll be turning to his son-in-law to take care of that as well. Middle East peace, trade with China. What else has he got? I don't even remember what else. But now the wall, which, depending on how you read things, either means Trump figures he can't get it done, so I'll put it on somebody else, or doesn't think the wall is really being built after all and wants a fixer on it, or has abandoned all pretense of trying to get it built at all and is giving it to his incompetent son-in-law. I don't know which take he's taking on all of this, but yeah, that's what's happening. The Washington Post reported on it yesterday. Let's see if they have some fun and interesting detail to add to it. Jared Kushner's new assignment, overseeing the construction of Trump's border wall. Josh Dawsey and Nick Miroff, M-I-R-O-F-F, on the byline for this piece. President Trump has made his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, friends privately appalled about this, the de facto project manager for constructing his border wall, frustrated with lack of progress over one of his top priorities as he heads into a tough re-election campaign, according to current and former administration officials. I'm sure they're denying that. He's not frustrated at all. And there's no lack of progress. So, whatever. But okay, in reality, yeah, those things are both true. Kushner convenes bi-weekly meetings in the West Wing, where he questions an array of government officials about progress on the wall, including updates on contractor data, precisely where it will be built, and how funding is being spent. He also shares and explains the president's wishes with the group, according to the officials familiar with the matter, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal White House deliberations. The president's son-in-law and senior advisor is pressing U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to expedite the process of taking over private land, because conservatism. Taking over private land needed for the project as the government seeks to meet Trump's goal of erecting 450 miles of barriers along the U.S.-Mexico border by the end of 2020. More than 800 filings to seize property will need to be made in the coming months if the government is going to succeed, officials said. Kushner has told other West Wing officials that he is in charge of the wall, according to aides, and that it is paramount to Trump that at least 400 miles be built by Election Day. It was 450 a minute ago. It's now down to 400. The point is to get as much built in the next year or so the president can say, in the face of intense, almost demented opposition, that he has made reasonable progress, said Mark Krikorian, director of the Center for Immigration Studies, a Washington think tank that seeks to restrict immigration and supports many of Trump's policies. Brief pause here. Did you get that? So the promise was the goal was 450 miles of barriers along the U.S. border by the end of 2020. A paragraph later, Kushner, blah, 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 said that it's paramount that at least 400 miles be built by Election Day. Next paragraph, Mark Krikorian says the point is get as much built in the next year or so, enough so that the president can say he's made reasonable progress. So that's about 15 miles, perhaps, would do the trick there. Trump campaigned on a promise to construct a wall along the southern border and to make Mexico pay for the project as part of his plan to limit illegal immigration. But Mexico scoffed at paying for a barrier it opposes, and Trump has not been able to get Congress to provide the funding he has requested because of Democratic opposition over what they have called the symbol of the president's anti-immigrant agenda. Which it is, but okay, journalism. The result is that while some existing barriers have been replaced with sturdier structures, only limited areas of new wall have been built, and that with money stolen from elsewhere in the budget without any appropriation for it by Congress, just as we were discussing yesterday. Now, Trump is banking on his son-in-law to turn what has been an intractable problem for his administration into a success. Mark Morgan, the acting CBP Commissioner, Customs and Border Patrol, said Kushner has expedited decisions on land acquisitions and construction issues and was key to bringing everyone together in the same room. So he's an usher. Just pointing out that this really doesn't take very much to bring people together in the same room. But okay, and he's expedited decisions is probably saying, forget about the legalities and figuring out how to do things in court. Just take the land, as the president says, and let them sue you. He doesn't need to know the intricacies of the wall. He understands building stuff. He understands timelines, Morgan said. Yes, I'm sure. Just like the president has been a tremendous success at that. But Kushner has clashed with the career officials who have questioned some of his ideas, such as installing web cameras to live stream construction. I think we guessed, or someone guessed, that had to be Kushner's idea when we brought that up. I think they should go ahead and do that. I'd love to see how people prank those cameras. But yeah, okay, so web cameras to live stream construction, which I think will just be an embarrassment. Anyway, he blamed former Chief of Staff John Kelly and former Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen for not focusing enough on the wall. Wow. Stab him in the back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with reading about the tragic story of the wall being assigned to Jared Kushner. As we left off, we heard that he was blaming John Kelly and Kirstjen Nielsen for not focusing enough on the wall. For their part, former officials have said Kushner displays a lack of knowledge of the policy issues and the politics involved in the immigration debate. That's true. Seems to be really true of a lot of things he's been assigned, but what are you going to do? He's the president's son-in-law, and this president loves nepotism. The wall adds to Kushner's growing portfolio of responsibilities, which some of his critics have said border on comical. I think a lot of people have said that. But again, journalism's. Since the start of the Trump presidency, Kushner has been entrusted with striking a Middle East peace deal, taking a lead role on trade policy, overseeing criminal justice reform, and modernizing the government. That's two different things, but, related. Overseeing criminal justice reform and modernizing the government with mixed results. It is various levels of failure. Though they did get a criminal justice reform bill through, it wasn't like he designed it, but it did happen and he claimed credit for it. Now, the wall being added to all of this. Kushner is also seeking to, again, push an overhaul of the legal immigration system after his first attempt failed to gain much support in Congress. And he has taken on a leadership role in the 2020 presidential campaign. Some of Kushner's critics say he can be tone deaf when it comes to politics, which would be great for putting him in charge of the presidential campaign, and does not understand or respect the value of having multiple agencies work through an official process on a project, which of course has been a problem in recently, in everything, but has come to our attention most notably in the foreign policy arena and in particular in Ukraine. They all seem to have a real disdain for multiple agency, the interagency process, which, as we've discussed, is not just red tape. It's set up in order to distribute the decision making. It's distributed as an anti-corruption measure. And of course, the navigating the politics of complicated issues is built into the interagency process. making a lot of people responsible for our diffuse decision making means that you have to build consensus internally before you even announce a policy, which likewise is supposed to give you, anyway, a better chance of achieving consensus on the outside by having already brought a wide variety of views and perspectives to bear on the policy before it's even announced. But okay, moving on here. Some of Kushner's critics say he can be tone deaf, not particularly good at politics, not always a great thing not great qualifications for running the campaign or policy, or both. And they snidely joke that it is ironic that an aide Trump occasionally mocks as a Democrat is in charge of the project, which has attracted significant criticism. But he remains the most influential advisor in the West Wing and enjoys a level of trust from the president that makes him unique within the administration, according to current and former administration officials. My hope is Jared can put a more laser focus. That is not correct syntax, but that's what it says. Put a more laser focus, more laser-like, whatever can be more laser focused on the project and the process. Maybe he can light a fire under the responsible agencies. Maybe he could use that laser to do it. But if recent history is any indication, and it often is, he will get frustrated before he gets results, said Senator Kevin Cramer, a senator who I did not know was a senator, reason being that he is a North Dakota Republican who has frequently talked with Trump about the project. It's not because he talks to Trump a lot that I don't know him. It said he's a North Dakota Republican. And honestly, I mean, who can track who wins the Republican primary for Senate in North Dakota? I mean, many people do. I don't. Once it's won, I tune out because you know how North Dakota is going to go. Anyway, that's why we have people like Senator Kevin Cramer, who no one has ever heard of, holding 1/100th of the votes in there. Anyway, officials closely involved with the border wall project, and wouldn't that be a huge priority for people in North friggin' Dakota? All right. Said Kushner has become increasingly involved in the details related to acquiring needed properties and pushing government attorneys to gain control of the parcels as quickly as possible, acting on Trump's directive to, quote, take the land. The White House declined to comment, but Kushner's defenders in the administration said he is bringing a private sector approach to the project, which everyone is supposed to think means efficient, but actually just means he gets angry and throws things when things don't go right, and then suppresses the story of his anger. Army Corps leaders have expressed concerns about Kushner's aggressive view of the government's eminent domain authorities, which allow it to take over private land for public use, telling him they are committed to following established legal procedures. That's the problem. See, a private sector approach to the project is to hell with established legal procedures. Just do it and let them sue us. That's the Trump approach, literally the Trump approach to this thing. During a recent meeting with officials at the border, Army Corps Lieutenant General Todd Simonite, Semonite. Simonite told them to follow the law and not worry about politics, a person with knowledge of the meeting said. One person involved in the construction of the wall who spoke on condition of anonymity said Kushner has annoyed officials involved in the process because they said he displayed a lack of knowledge about the government procurement process and the realities of the project. So, he took a much more hands-on role in figuring out mile by mile how to get more wall up, this person said. It didn't help put the wall up faster and cheaper. His interventions actually created more inefficiency in the process. The Trump administration has completed 83 miles of new barrier so far, according to the latest CBP figures, but nearly all of that is classified as replacement wall, typically swapping out an older, smaller structure for a row of steel bars 18 to 30 feet in height. Kushner insists the administration remains on target to meet the president's goal of 450 miles by the end of the year, a pace that will require construction to accelerate at least fourfold, according to government data reviewed by the Washington Post. The president's son-in-law has set a goal of 30 to 35 miles of new barriers per month by spring, requiring crews to average a new linear mile of fencing every day. Emoji about that one. In recent months, the project has picked up momentum in western states where crews are able to build on remote desert land already controlled by the government. Administration officials acknowledge that building in those areas amounts to the lowest hanging fruit for the border wall project. In Texas, the project is significantly more complex. There, the border runs more than 1,200 miles along the, it says, is it sinuous? I mean, it looks like sinuous, like sinew, but it's S-I-N-U-O-U-S, but sign, like wavy, or is that what we're talking about? Sinuous course? Is that the sign, the root for that? I don't know. Anyway, new word for me. Anyhow, along the course of the Rio Grande, of course, the winding, we'll say, Rio Grande, and nearly all of the land where the government needs to build is privately owned, which doesn't matter at all to conservatives, I don't think. The Trump administration's plan includes 166 miles of new barriers in Texas, and nearly all of that will have to be built on private land. By the way, I mean, if you're not drawing this conclusion on your own, the reason that there aren't barriers already, I mean, we have barriers in many places, and they're being replaced with these new barriers. Why do we keep hearing about old wall being replaced with new wall rather than new wall being constructed? And it's probably because they've pretty much constructed barriers everywhere that it would have been easy to do so, where the government controls the land. It's where the government doesn't control the land that it's hard. And where the government doesn't control the land, the landowners are apparently not interested in having a wall there. And that makes it tough. That's why it's working out this way. The Trump administration's plan includes 166 miles of new barriers in Texas, right? All of which would have to be built on private land where people don't want it, and where they'll have to fight in court to get the land. For Kushner to meet Trump's timeline, the government will have to obtain hundreds of privately owned parcels and complete construction in the next 13 months, because that's when the election is. Less than that, actually, now. But anyway, the area presents engineering challenges to the administration, as well as real estate ones, because the Rio Grande floodplain requires much of the structure to be installed along river levees at a significantly higher cost. Former officials closely involved with the project disputed that Kushner will have an easier time making progress than past officials who ran point on the issue, and disputed the claim that Nielsen and Kelly lacked focus or urgency, insisting that the pace of construction has been determined by the availability of funding and the acquisition of private land. One former Department of Homeland Security official said, "The administration to date has been careful to follow established guidelines for the use of eminent domain. We weren't taking people's land willy-nilly," said the official, and that's the problem. And I guess maybe most of the analysis is, well, if Kushner follows the law the way Kelly and Nielsen followed the law, and they didn't follow the law on everything, but with respect to taking private property for construction of the wall, they appear to have. I guess their thinking is Kushner will make more or better progress because he won't obey or follow the law on these things, and perhaps he feels more secure that he will be absolved of responsibility for breaking the law, whether by pardon or some other mechanism, than Nielsen and Kelly thought they might be. I could see where he might think that Trump as president would have his back more readily than the others did. Maybe that will contribute to better progress. Another official who defended Nielsen said she struggled to get former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis to view the wall project as a priority, and his frustration with the president's plan to use military funding contributed to a lack of urgency at the Pentagon and the Army Corps. Makes sense. The president's frequently shifting design requests also sapped momentum, former officials said, and it usually fell to Nielsen to explain why some of his ideas were not feasible. Trump grew irritated at Nielsen's naysaying and fired her in April. Trump regularly changes his mind about the project, according to current and former aides. Growing frustrated with contractors, he has at times encouraged aides to eschew the traditional contracting process and just go with a firm he knows from New York, which has drawn resistance, these aides said. Yes, again, distributed decision-making, it's an anti-corruption thing. There's supposed to be competitive bidding for this. You can't just give it to a guy that you know and get away with that. Unless, of course, you can because you pardon everybody, yada, yada. Trump has called for irregular requests like building large ditches, using pointy spikes, or painting the wall matte black so it will be hot to the touch. Remember, alligators and snakes as well. As Kushner took control of the project, he elevated the regular meetings to executive-level gatherings at the White House, requiring the attendance of cabinet-level officials, because that's important. If I'm going to be there, they should be there too. He also demanded a new project plan with timetables and construction targets. Kushner has talked with other officials about securing money for the wall, even mentioning using military construction funds again, a notion that is likely to attract resistance from Capitol Hill. Morgan said Kushner asked details and, quote, nitty-gritty details about specific parts of the project in the meetings, which often stretch more than an hour. Can you imagine? There are very real concerns, Morgan said. We're being sued on a regular basis on multiple fronts. Land acquisition is a very, very challenging process. We're trying to become more efficient and get more done. There are real challenges. In early January, Kushner asked then acting commissioner, thank you, got to do that again, then acting commissioner Kevin McCleenan, remember him, whether closing border loopholes or building the wall would do the most to curb illegal immigration. And McCleenan said that closing loopholes would do far more to curb immigration. Still, Kushner has told others that the wall has to be built because his father-in-law promised it would be. Kushner said something to the effect of, "We've basically wasted 2 years," said a person with knowledge of the meeting with McCleenan. And so they have, except the figure is now 3 years, and a fourth appears to be in the offing. Okay, so there we are. Just keeping up to date with what Jared Kushner is taking on and being assigned, and the progress of the wall. Okay, let's see. More information also broke yesterday after the show. The Wall Street Journal reporting, probably in a way that we're not going to have access to. And I tried. They've done very well by themselves for their firewalling of their stories at the Wall Street Journal. They were among the first to properly firewall their stories such that simply opening up the story in Pocket did not allow access to the text. Many places took a long time to figure that one out. So they've managed to figure out the technology to block it in the Pocket view as well as the original URL. And then I got around that by every time I needed a Wall Street Journal article that I knew was going to be useful on the air, I would put it in Pocket, but also grab the text of it manually, copy and paste it into an email so that I could share the story later. And now you can't do that anymore, and it doesn't cut and paste the same way. So good for them for protecting their content, but bad for them for getting their content shared on the air. But Rebecca Davis O'Brien, Rebecca Ballhaus, and Shelby Holliday reporting for the Wall Street Journal. I'll give you the headline. Federal subpoenas seek information on Giuliani's consulting business. Giuliani on the hot seat and under the spotlight yesterday. They began this way. I'll give you their opening paragraph, and then I'll have to switch over to the Washington Post, which I do pay for, and which will and therefore be able to share their content. Subpoenas issued to people with ties to President Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, indicate a broad federal investigation into possible money laundering, obstruction of justice, and campaign finance violations, and show that prosecutors are probing Mr. Giuliani's consulting business and other sources of income, according to people familiar with the matter. Those are the ones you'll want to talk to when you want to report on a matter. That's the most I can give you, but credit to them for coming out with the story first. I'll switch now to the Washington Post's efforts on that front. Investigators scrutinize Giuliani firm and donations to Trump super PAC as part of broad probe. Don't get too excited there, Donald Trump. Broad probe isn't what you think. Devlin Barrett, Tom Hamburger, who we spell his name like Hamburger, if you want to keep up with things, and Rosalind Helderman and Josh Dawsey. Josh Dawsey's name called twice this morning on the byline for this piece. The federal investigation into two associates of Rudolph W. Giuliani. Can you guess who they might be? Yeah, Parnas and Fruman, of course. The federal investigation into these two is exploring a wide range of potential crimes, including wire fraud and failure to register as a foreign agent, as prosecutors dig into the pair's interactions with the president's personal lawyer and the main pro-Trump super PAC. According to people familiar with the investigation, no surprise really for us, Giuliani's dealings with the two men, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, are being investigated by federal prosecutors at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. That office has already filed campaign finance charges against Parnas and Fruman and accused them of conspiracy and making false statements to the Federal Election Commission. According to people familiar with the ongoing case, investigators are scrutinizing Giuliani's consulting business and eyeing donations made to America First Action, the main pro-Trump super PAC set up by his advisors and allies after his election, as well as its affiliated nonprofit, which it really shouldn't have, but does because no one enforces the law. As part of the probe, federal prosecutors are examining a raft of other potential crimes, including foreign lobbying registration violations, destruction or alteration of documents, aiding and abetting federal crimes, and foreign contributions to U.S. candidates, according to the people who spoke on condition of anonymity, because of the ongoing investigation. The list of possible crimes under investigation does not mean those charges will be filed. Good point. They do, however, indicate prosecutors are casting a wide net for wrongdoing as they examine the business and legal dealings of the president's personal lawyer and two Soviet emigre business executives who have been assisting Giuliani in the efforts to dig up damaging information about the Bidens, all about that, on the president's behalf. Parnas and Fruman have pleaded not guilty. An attorney for Parnas declined to comment. Same with Fruman, although he didn't respond. That's why he didn't have anything in there. Giuliani, who has not been accused of any crimes to date, has denied wrongdoing. He did not respond to requests for comment. His attorney declined to comment, although it looked to me like he had commented to the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes Rudy's idea of not commenting is to give a very extensive and damning comment, though. I don't know. We'll see whether they pick up on those things. But if not, then perhaps we can wring the article, maybe out of Greg, if we can get a show together tomorrow. He's got a subscription to the Journal. Kelly Sadler, a spokeswoman for America First Action, said the group reached out last month to federal prosecutors in New York, offering to cooperate voluntarily. She said the group has received no subpoenas and follows the law, declining to comment further. I don't believe that. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment. The October indictment of the two men does not mention Giuliani or suggest he was connected to the alleged crimes, but in the week after their arrest, prosecutors issued subpoenas to a number of people involved with Fruman and Parnas, asking for, among other things, any documents regarding Giuliani and his consulting firm, Giuliani Partners. The Wall Street Journal first reported the interest in Giuliani's firm, and so they did, linking, of course, to the same article. But guess what? Because they linked to it, it looks like I might be able to get into their story after all. It's interesting the way their firewall works. Occasionally, Wall Street Journal will pull it down when it's a significant story that they think they'll be getting a lot of traffic from. Well, that was helpful. Maybe I can switch over to that and dig up the Giuliani quotes that don't so far appear in this article. But I'll continue with the Washington Post for the moment. In 2017, the firm was hired by, and we're talking about Giuliani Partners, remember? Also, recall that Giuliani Partners was where the payment that Charles Gucciardo provided on behalf, allegedly, of Fraud Guarantee. That's where the payment landed, despite the fact that it was originally claimed that it was for legal services. They're now muddying that up somewhat and saying maybe Fraud Guarantee was paying for some consulting services as well that Giuliani Partners ordinarily provides. Anyway, in 2017, Giuliani Partners was hired by Pavel And the last name here is, I guess, Fuchs, maybe? Fuks. It could be something else, but I don't know. Ukrainian pronunciation is odd. Anyway, he is, believe it or not, a wealthy Ukrainian developer, in fact. And they were hired to help update its emergency response system, according to Giuliani. Giuliani traveled to Ukraine in November to meet with top officials, including then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. Because obviously, this wealthy Ukrainian developer has everything to do with Petro Poroshenko and top officials. Good excuse to show up in Ukraine, I guess. Parnas has previously told the Washington Post that Giuliani is a, quote, very good friend whom he got to know in 2016 while fundraising for President Trump's campaign. Giuliani has referred to Parnas and Fruman as clients and has said that he was paid $500,000 to help advise a financial security company started by Parnas called Fraud Guarantee. So now the pivot to making the payments to Giuliani partners legitimate as a fee for consulting as opposed to the legal representation that he originally seemed to be claiming. After Parnas and Fruman were arrested, Giuliani denied any knowledge of wrongdoing on their part. In an interview, he said that he had seen the two men quite often and had no reason to believe that they are anything other than decent guys. Sure. One person with knowledge of the investigation said there is a particular interest in interactions with three key figures in the saga of Giuliani's pursuit of dirt on Biden and his son Hunter, Poroshenko and the former Ukrainian prosecutors Yuri Lutsenko and Viktor Shokin. In recent days, Parnas' attorney, Joseph Bondi, has said Parnas would be willing to testify before Congress and explain what he knows about Giuliani, provided Parnas is given accommodations to avoid incriminating himself, which would probably require immunity. I don't know if that's going to happen. His campaign has included tweeting directly at lawmakers using the hashtag #LetLevSpeak. But of course, he is currently indicted on federal charges. It's not likely that they're going to want to immunize him against those. That might very well be what this campaign is all about. He may have nothing. He just wants to get promised immunity. Generally, Congress is wary about extending immunity to people under criminal investigation, fearful that public testimony could make their prosecutions more difficult. The federal investigation into Parnas and Fruman is also delving into their efforts to secure business deals for themselves in the historically corrupt Ukrainian energy sector while they were assisting Giuliani's work in that country. Last week, federal prosecutors questioned a top executive of Ukraine's state-owned gas company about his encounters with the pair as they pursued energy deals. Parnas and Fruman were arrested on October 9th at Dulles, the airport, when they were preparing to fly to Europe. In the months leading up to the charges, the two assisted Giuliani in efforts to pressure Ukraine to launch an investigation of Biden and his son Hunter over his role in Burisma. Those efforts raised alarms inside the government. You know about all of that, particularly at the State Department and National Security Council, where government officials feared the president's lawyer was conducting a kind of shadow diplomacy to generate attacks on Trump's political rival, according to congressional testimony. That effort led to impeachment hearings in the House. You know about those. Do we need any more of this paragraph? Some officials also said they believe the Trump administration held up nearly $400 million in security assistance as part of that effort to get President Zelensky to make this announcement. You're aware of this for certain. The indictment filed in October against Fruman and Parnas charged that the two broke campaign finance laws amid their effort to get a U.S. ambassador to Ukraine removed from that post. Justice Department charges that Parnas and Fruman disguised the source of their $325,000 donation in 2018 to America First by giving the money in the name of global energy producers. The purported, very good, liquefied natural gas company Parnas and Fruman controlled. Federal prosecutors said GEP was a front used to disguise the fund's true source and that the money for the Political Action Committee came from a private lending transaction between Fruman and third parties. America First Action and America First Policies, an independent big money operation supporting Trump, has emerged as a center of gravity in Trump's political world and a vehicle through which wealthy donors and top Trump aides have gained influence since 2017. Trump officially gave it his imprimatur earlier this year when his campaign released a statement saying it was the one approved group. Starting in early 2018, America First began hosting exclusive dinners catering to wealthy donors, giving them access to the president in small gatherings. Parnas and Fruman attended one such dinner in April of 2018, where they discussed the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine with Trump. The Post has reported. You know about that. We'll be back with more after this. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I guess really we've reached the end of the useful information in the Washington Post piece. Now that I have access to the Wall Street Journal piece, I could read it, but a lot of it is duplicative. But I think maybe we can at least use it to pry out some of the comments made by Rudy Giuliani, probably, I guess, directly to the Wall Street Journal, that therefore did not get on the record with the Washington Post report. Let me just see if I can jump in here and do a little skimming in real time and see if we don't waste too much time overlapping here. Subpoenas described to the Wall Street Journal listed more than half a dozen potential charges under consideration: obstruction of justice, money laundering, conspiracy to defraud the United States, that sort of blanket charge that they threw against a number of people in the Mueller report as well, making false statements to the federal government, serving as an agent of a foreign government without registering with the Justice Department, donating funds from foreign nationals, making contributions in the name of another person, or allowing someone else to use one's name to make a contribution, along with mail fraud and wire fraud. It isn't known whether all these lines of inquiry relate to prosecutors' examination of Mr. Giuliani and his consulting business. Parnas and Fruman, both Florida businessmen and U.S. citizens born in former Soviet republics, have pleaded not guilty. Then there was no comment, again, from the lawyers. Let's see. Skipping down just a little bit here. We already know about the indictment against Parnas and Fruman and what it entails. Giuliani, in an interview Sunday with the Journal, said when clients have asked him to do something related to the Trump administration, he has referred them to registered lobbyists. He also denied business dealings in Ukraine since he started as Mr. Trump's lawyer in April of 2018. All they have to do is come and ask me, he said of investigators. There's obviously a concerted effort to spread as many lies about me as possible, to destroy my reputation so that I'm not credible when I continue to reveal all of the massive evidence of criminality by the Bidens, which he appears to still be hiding. But yes, it wouldn't be a bad byproduct if you were not credible in all of this, or were regarded more widely as not credible. Let's see. Anything else that we should distill from out of this? There was, of course, some more background information, which we know, but it was interesting to hear the Wall Street Journal restate. There was the overlapping concerns, which could be of import to investigators, as they consider how Fruman and Parnas gained access to Trump's inner circles. At least two of the people who got subpoenas had been asked by Parnas to invest in Fraud Guarantee, a fraud insurance company he helped set up in Florida, or to help fund a promised $500,000 payment to Mr. Giuliani, who he said provided business and legal advice to the company, people familiar with Parnas's request said. So he approached a lot of people, not only about investing in Fraud Guarantee, but in paying Rudy this $500,000 promise that he eventually got Charles Gucciardo to pay. And I guess he was floating to a lot of people the possibility that you could regard the $500,000 payment as an investment in Fraud Guarantee, which is not really the way things work. A representative for one of those people, a Florida businessman, said the man had declined to provide any money. The other man, also a Florida businessman, did invest in Fraud Guarantee after Parnas told him his plan was to secure a $20 million federal grant. According to one of the businessman's associates, the Journal couldn't determine what the grant would fund, or even what the grant was, for that matter. We will see how that develops. And it sounds, when they're calling him a Florida businessman, I would imagine that would be someone other than Gucciardo, who invested in Fraud Guarantee when on the promise that they were about to get a $20 million federal grant, unless Gucciardo maintains a home in Florida and pretends to be a Florida businessman rather than a New York lawyer from time to time. Giuliani said on Sunday, "I had no knowledge of a grant, and it seemed to me they were at a premature position to be looking for a grant." Parnas often touted the firm's connections with Giuliani to potential investors, the Journal has previously reported, citing people familiar with the matter. The payment to Giuliani was ultimately funded by Gucciardo, a personal injury lawyer who paid Giuliani $500,000 in 2 installments last fall. We learned about that. In exchange, Gucciardo received a stake in the company, his attorney said. His attorney said Gucciardo believed Fraud Guarantee had tremendous potential because Giuliani was going to be behind, alongside, and the face of the company. Some of the subpoenas sought materials relating to Fraud Guarantee and David Correa. Remember that guy? Who co-founded Fraud Guarantee with Parnas. Correa was also charged in the October indictment with 1 count of participating in a conspiracy to conceal the origins of campaign contributions from overseas donors. No response for a request for comment from him. After starting the company in 2013, the men hired Jack Berkman, a Washington lobbyist, to help them obtain federal money, Mr. Berkman said. Parnas and Correa sought to pitch the company as a tool for the Obama administration in its pushes for small business investment and consumer protection, according to a person with whom Parnas discussed the grant. Fraud Guarantee billed itself as an insurer for investors against fraud, though it never has had any clients. From 2013 to 2019, no clients. How are they going to get a $20 million grant? I don't know. Berkman, in an interview, said he met Parnas in 2012 and assisted the company with an application for a federal grant based on computer innovation in the role of finance. That's what it says, and it's in quotes. Berkman said he filed the application in 2013 or 2014, but declined to discuss the matter in detail, citing attorney-client privilege. He denied lobbying for the company. Parnas told one potential investor in 2014 that he was headed to Washington to meet with Michelle Obama, then the First Lady. No meeting occurred, according to the former White House official. Fraud Guarantee never received a federal grant. Wow. So, factor all of that into whether or not you want him testifying to Congress on this whole thing. Anyway, it sounds like he's teasing with information that might be useful and in damaging Trump and or Giuliani, but does he sound like you can trust everything he says, or does it sound, do you worry at all about being handed information that is a setup? It is possible, and it does worry me as a possibility given how loose he is with the truth and what a shadowy figure he seems to be in all of this. Okay. Let's see. Other items for discussion. Let's do one more thing on Lev Parnas. I know I grabbed, this should be hopefully short, I grabbed the Andrea Mitchell tweet from the other day that says, Yes, on Lev Parnas. Jackie's, how does she pronounce her last name? I've had it's been years since is it Spear or Spire? We have subpoenaed documents from Parnas. What's been dribbling out is mostly incomplete commentary from his attorney. He has not been fully supportive of that subpoena. He has not disclosed as much as we've asked him to disclose. So, despite the fact that I can never remember how she pronounces her name, and I should look it up, and I could probably find a YouTube video of an interview with her that gets the pronunciation right. I'm sorry, I can't remember all the time. Anyway, she's certainly expressing some reservations about Lev Parnas's value as a witness in the congressional impeachment inquiry. We're not really sure where he stands. I think the notion that he has flipped on Trump, it came very easily. And I'm not certain that I buy it 100%, and I wonder if maybe the rest of you have the same feeling. Okay. Many other interesting stories that absolutely need coverage. Some follow-up stories here too, but I think I want to cast the net a little wider. Let me run over here and see if I can get this text from, I know I'm running into firewall problems with Vanity Fair as well. And I think, I guess I've read my last complimentary article for the month over there, but I think that Vanity Fair is, generally speaking, terrible about rigging their firewalls to comply with Pocket. So we'll violate protocol and apologize to the fine writers at Vanity Fair who are not being remunerated by the 1 cent that was coming out of this click here, but maybe the rest of you can help them out with that. Bess Levin, writing for Vanity Fair the other day, wildly incriminating emails. Would you like to read about those? Show the White House knew Trump was extorting Ukraine. Yes, that does sound very interesting, doesn't it? Let's take a look at what purports to be the body of this article in Pocket format. Of the many defenses Donald Trump's allies have tried to make stick concerning his attempt to extort Ukraine, one of the most oft repeated is that the hold on nearly $400 million in military aid in exchange for investigations doesn't matter because the aid was ultimately released. One problem there is that the aid was conveniently only released the day after Representative Adam Schiff sent a letter regarding the existence of the whistleblower complaint, suggesting it might have remained in limbo if no one had raised the stink. Another problem? Internal emails show that the White House scrambled to come up with a justification for freezing the money just days after the White House counsel's office was told that an anonymous CIA official had filed a complaint with the agency's general counsel concerning the president's July 25th phone call, suggesting people on the inside knew they were effed. That's interesting. Vanity Fair decided to go with that one. They used the word, of course. By the way, how come I was surprised to not hear discussed to this point where the email trove came from, and I don't know that I even put aside the news story about who had made the FOIA request that resulted in the discovery of this trove of emails. And I'm sorry I didn't do that now, so that we could credit the people who had put up the fight that resulted in our getting a hold of these things. I hope that it comes up later in the piece here. Otherwise, I'll have to track it down and let you know. The Washington Post reports that a confidential White House review of Trump's decision to put a hold on aid to Ukraine, maybe that article can tell us about who filed the FOIA request, that the Post review has turned up hundreds of documents that reveal extensive efforts to generate an after-the-fact justification for the decision, and a debate over whether the delay was legal. That, of course, puts us in, a particularly interesting legal footing for all of this. Their decision being either arbitrary and capricious or driven by illegal motivations. That is, the hope that the aid could be traded for dirt on the Bidens that would be useful to the campaign, which is an illegal pursuit for the official United States government to be chasing down. Which, everything everyone ever suspected about what was going on. Anyway, the fact that they were trying to concoct an after-the-fact justification is circumstantial, anyway, evidence that, one, that they had a nefarious goal in mind, and two, that they knew it was nefarious enough to land them in trouble. Anyway, in early August, for example, email exchanges show acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney asking Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought to provide an update on the legal rationale for holding up the aid and how much longer it could be delayed. We discussed this some weeks ago about in an article I think we dug up from, I don't remember, was it Just Security possibly? Maybe Lawfare, discussing the legal issues of what latitude the OMB had and didn't have in all of this. The month prior, back to Vanity Fair here, the president had decided to freeze the money, quote, without an assessment of the reasoning or legal justification, unquote. Because when you're pressuring another country to do your personal bidding, you don't typically ask, hey, is this cool legally speaking, right? Emails show Vought and OMB staffers insisted that the hold was legal, while officials at the State Department and National Security Council believed otherwise. According to the justification from the OMB lawyers, withholding the aid was legal so long as they referred to it as a temporary hold, according to people familiar with the matter. Mulvaney's request for information came days after the White House counsel's office was put on notice that an anonymous CIA official, this seems to be repetitive, and it's in italics, and I'm wondering whether this is like in the normal format you would be able to tell that this is a sidebar. I don't think this sidebar, though, is adding any additional news that we don't already know about. Let's see, is this down here? This looks a little bit new, but it might be a review of what we've already read. The emails revealed by White House lawyers include some in which Mulvaney urges Vought to immediately focus on Ukraine's aid package, making it clear it was a top priority for the administration. Mulvaney is a critical player in the Ukraine saga, as he has acknowledged that he asked the OMB to block the release of congressionally approved aid to Ukraine at the president's request in early or mid-July 2019. While the White House has stonewalled Congress's request for information and for witnesses to testify, Mark Sandy, a career OMB official, told lawmakers that that the delayed aid was highly unusual and that he had never before seen senior political OMB officials seize control of a portfolio in such a manner. In a statement, OMB spokeswoman Rachel K. Semmel insisted, even now, after all we know, that, quote, there was a legal consensus at every step of the way that the money could be withheld to conduct the policy review, unquote. There was no policy review, of course, and that the emails do not at all reveal panicked staffers trying to justify Trump's actions after the fact. OMB works closely with agencies on executing the budget. Routine practices and procedures were followed, not scrambling, she said. The White House press office and counsel's office did not respond to the Post's request for comment. Robert Driscoll, Mulvaney's lawyer, declined to comment. For his part, Mulvaney famously told reporters that of course Trump wanted a quid pro quo deal with Ukraine, and that such things happen in this administration all the time, before attempting to walk back everything he said. Mulvaney's position in the White House is, not surprisingly, tenuous at best, though Trump insisted on Monday that he remains confident in the acting chief of staff, telling reporters, "Of course I do," before heading to an event with Conan the military dog, where he did an awkward impression of a person who's comfortable around animals. Very interesting. By the way, if you are, we didn't discuss that, but just want to put on the record here. You, me, nobody you know, no one has any real reason, any rational basis to assume that the dog that showed up yesterday and was purported to be Conan, the dog that participated in this raid that resulted in the killing of the ISIS figure whose name I've already forgotten. Is it al-Baghdadi? That's the real dog. There's really no reason to believe that. I don't know whether there's paperwork that exists. It's not an important thing. It would just be one of those things that they lie about just for fun, I think. In fact, they haven't even been able to straighten out whether or not the dog that purportedly participated in a raid is male or female, or whether or not the dog on display yesterday, although many of you might have been able to get a good look and tell whether the dog was male or female. But they went back and forth with the White House officials in the communications department like 5-6 times trying to figure out whether or not Conan was male or female, or whether or not this particular dog was male or female. I think that there's more to it, that they can't even tell whether that dog is Conan or not. And Trump threw in a couple other things that were likely to be lies in his comments too, like that Conan was badly injured in the raid, but recovered fully and has since been on very important raids as well. Plus also that Conan is a fantastic drug-sniffing dog, which seems unlikely given that they probably only train these dogs to do one or the other, not just anything that dogs can do. So, again, not important, just one of those things where no story is good enough to stand on its own. He has to embellish everything because that's the kind of person he is, and that kind of person shouldn't be president of the United States. Okay? Moving on. Let's see. Do we do follow-up stories from the Washington Post about how bad firing Richard Spencer was? Or try to throw in something else? Let's do both. How about that? First of all, the something else. Just to get it out of the way. Talking Points memo. An exclusive scoop. We have to do their story on this one. We can't go elsewhere. Or at least that was the case yesterday. Maybe other people have copied it since then. Exclusive. Bud Cummins tried to interest U.S. law enforcement in Ukraine dirt on the Bidens in 2018. Does Bud Cummins' name ring a bell for you at all? They'll ring it for you in just a second. Josh Kovensky, writing for Talking Points memo on this piece. Are you ready? As far back as October 2018, a former U.S. attorney acting on behalf of Ukrainian interests tried to get federal law enforcement to bite on bogus political dirt about the Bidens and on whether Paul Manafort's notorious Black Ledger was a forgery. So it appears this is somebody trying not to get the federal law enforcement officials to bite on the fact that the dirt was bogus, but rather to bite on the dirt despite the fact that it eventually turned out to be bogus. Who's Bud Cummins? Bud Cummins, a former U.S. attorney in Arkansas, yes, maybe, emailed the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, relaying a request for a meeting on the same topics into which President Trump would later demand Ukraine conduct investigations. TPM has been investigating Cummins' role in attempting to serve as an intermediary between certain Ukrainian interests and federal law enforcement. Cummins' involvement has not been previously reported. However, Rudy Giuliani sent a letter on Saturday to Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Lindsey Graham, claiming that a former U.S. attorney was ready to provide emails and memoranda about an attempt to get the FBI to investigate Biden and the list of Manafort bribes called the Black Ledger. Cummins confirmed to TPM Sunday morning that Giuliani's letter was referring to him. The meeting proposed by Cummins would have been between Ukraine's then Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko and Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman. Lutsenko waged a campaign to push out Marie Yovanovitch, then the U.S. ambassador in Kyiv, in part by spreading the same allegation that he had sent to Cummins. Lutsenko has emerged as the figure who also channeled dirt to Giuliani as it made its way into the U.S. media ecosystem. The email proposing the meeting, which Cummins said he sent on October 4th, 2018, laid out allegations about Hunter Biden and his work for Burisma and that the Black Ledger was falsified, Cummins told TPM in a phone interview. Two fervent hopes of the Donald Trump cult just happened to make their way to Bud Cummins and be passed on to the Southern District of New York. Cummins said that he received the information about Hunter Biden and Manafort from two intermediaries of Lutsenko in September of 2018. The information I gave them was a request to meet with Lutsenko, Cummins said, adding that he had a brief phone call with Berman and sent 3 follow-up emails after the information was sent. Speaking over the phone Sunday morning, Cummins expressed to TPM a mixture, this is interesting, of dismay that Berman broke off contact and mild embarrassment at having dealt with Ukrainians whose motivations he admitted he did not understand. Cummins added that when he sent the email to Berman, he wasn't advocating for the legitimacy of any of this. At the time, I didn't know a whole lot about Ukraine. I didn't make any real attempt to vet this. He added, I didn't care. That wasn't my job, in a discussion of what may have been motivating Lutsenko. Lutsenko and a spokesman for Lutsenko didn't immediately return requests for comment. Berman's office declined to comment. Cummins told TPM that he tried to signal to Berman that he was not vouching for the credibility of the allegations themselves. He said that he suggested to Berman that Lutsenko could, quote, delegate some investigators to meet with some line prosecutors in his office, referring to Berman. Cummins called the lack of response from the Manhattan federal prosecutor a breathtaking double standard, given how the Mueller investigation targeted President Trump. But then again, in September, October of 2018, did you really think the Southern District of New York was going to drop its Trump business and look into what Lutsenko had to say about Joe Biden? It didn't make any sense. The Black Ledger thing, maybe, but at that point, Mueller probably would have waved him off with that and said, well, let us take care of the ledger. Thanks very much. Cummins called the lack of response, as he said, breathtaking double standard. Why would he call it that? Who is Bud Cummins? Finally, we find out. A former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Arkansas. Cummins was one of the federal prosecutors fired by the George W. Bush administration during the U.S. attorney's scandal. Does that make him a straight player? A good guy? Not necessarily, not by itself. A New York Times editorial at the time described Cummins as, quote, one of the most distinguished lawyers in Arkansas, who is respected by Republicans and Democrats alike. Cummins was pushed out of office in favor of a deputy to Karl Rove. In 2016, Cummins served as chair of Donald Trump's campaign in Arkansas. Now we get a better view of who he is and what he evolved into. Then, as a Trump whip at the 2016 Republican National Convention in Cleveland, he went on to serve on the Trump administration transition team. Maybe that's why. I mean, there's no love lost between Team Trump and Karl Rove. So it's not like being targeted for getting pushed out of your job by Karl Rove means you're a good guy. You just could be a different kind of bad guy. Cummins said he believed that the mistrust of the FBI was what led the Ukrainians to seek a back channel to the Justice Department. Right? I guess this is a partial explanation for why, if you had a legitimate interest in investigating the Bidens, would you not have gone the legitimate normal diplomacy route in seeking an investigation and making it a joint investigation with the FBI? Cummins says he thinks the Ukrainians mistrusted the FBI officers who were in the embassy, and maybe all FBI officers for that matter. He said his Ukrainian interlocutors, whom he declined to name, apparently went to him because they believed the FBI in Ukraine, yes, they are stationed in every embassy, the FBI in Ukraine had either wittingly or unwittingly become the pawns of the ambassador and the Secretary of State and Vice President, and they cannot be trusted. Well, really, honestly, under the normal circumstances, the FBI really kind of are answerable to the ambassador and the Secretary of State and Vice President in a way. But whatever. The Ukrainians he was dealing with thought that the FBI was somehow corrupt, and they needed the former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Arkansas to help them out. That is a very interesting line of communication they developed there. Anyway, Cummins declined to say if his actions were related to work for any particular client. Public records show he previously registered as a lobbyist for, and this is really where it becomes topsy-turvy, former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. We really may not understand what her role in this all has been either, only that she has made enemies in the past with Dmytro Firtash. There's more to the article. We no longer have time to get all the way through it. You should take a look at it. We will try and get some kind of programming together. No word yet on whether I'm going to be free on Wednesday morning, but I think we might be able to just try and squeak it in if I can get back from the dentist fast enough. All right, time now for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam, who absolutely has time for a program today and will bring you all sorts of valuable
From Daily
information
Co's Radio
as a result.
on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waltman.
Man, lots for him to report here, too. Hardcore Trump apologist Mo Babbling Brooks, I like the nickname, claimed subpoenaed impeachment witnesses testifying against Trump are breaking the law. How about that? There's much more, of course, and there's always an international angle on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Stay tuned for more from around the world with Putnam, Justice Putnam, next.